What a bully! Scott Arfield! He's been threatening that recently, and all the Burnley players run to the Darwin end.
Burnley win the next ball. It's Rory now. On the outside, decent.
Barnes! He got it! Ashley Barnes with it! What a cross from Rory! And there was Ashley Barnes! And Burnley leading the derby.
Obviously quickly finds Benson in space at the byline. Can Burnley get a goal here? Back for Brownell. Saved by the keeper.
Burnley won it to the end. That is magnificent. They deserve that.
Only by Paul Teller. Off for a hat-trick.
He's got it. Hat-trick for Nathan Teller. Oh, he's on fire at the minute. 3-0 Burnley. It's Nathan Teller's day. And Burnley are 3 up here. Fantastic derby.
Here's Benson. Can he go on the outside? Comes inside. Tommy Shaw.
Oh, the goal. Manuel Benson once more. That is top class. Burnley have done it. Fantastic. Clarence deserve the championship title. They've been the best side throughout the campaign. Burnley have won the second tier. What a fantastic achievement. The players have been magnificent.
Yes, hello everyone and welcome along to the latest instalment of the Turfcast podcast. Pre-game show with me, Joe Redmond, ahead of Burnley's trip to the northeast where they face Newcastle United at St James's Park on Saturday, where Burnley will try and look to stop the rot of 5 defeats in a row. And I just feel like that's the first step. That's all we need to do. Just stop the rot. Just get a point and build on it. If you get a point up at St James's or lo behold a win, does anyone think we can win the game? I'm not sure I do at this stage. But we go up there, we get a positive result. The mood changes, doesn't it? Then we go into the Fulham game with our tails up a little bit. Then we've got Bournemouth after that, then Everton, then Newcastle again. So, yeah, it's a St James's Park. Let's make no bones about it. It's a very, very, very tough place to go. But if Burnley can go up there and get a result, any type of result, and even take a boring Scott Parker Championship 0-0 right now, just to stop the rot, just to kickstart that season again, then we can all start saying things like, season starts now. But yeah, it was pretty abject against Palace, wasn't it? I'm not a fan of Scott Parker's interviews after the Palace game, if I'm being honest with you. I feel like he's just resigned himself to relegation already. So like not criticising the players as such, but saying we have a lot of fight, but maybe that's not good enough. Maybe that's not enough. I just feel like it's writing the season off already. And if you're a player watching that, you're probably going to think, was there any point? If Scott don't believe, it's just point in me believing. But anyway, this is the pre-game show. I might do a separate video on Parker's interviews if I get a chance, but I'm a very busy man. I need to nip to a garden centre after this video. The life of luxury for me. But as you are aware, the pre-game show is always about speaking to a fan of the opposition. This time we don't just have a fan, we have a journalist. And I'd love to introduce Andrew from the Black and White podcast, which is also ran by the local newspaper up there, the Newcastle Chronicle. How you doing, mate?
I'm good, thanks. Yourself?
Yeah, football aside and cricket aside. Having said that, I think just to give you people a live update, even though this isn't going out live, I think the England score in the end isn't horrendous. We've just gone to 307 for 9. Don't know why I've said that because I'm not going to stick this up till tomorrow. So the cricket itself is starting to make me feel slightly better, but not Burnley as such anyway at the minute. Anyway, this is about Newcastle and things like that. So talk to me about Newcastle's season so far, because from outside looking in, doesn't feel that good. Like, it feels hit and miss, because I look at Newcastle. I've seen you beat City recently. I've seen you do very well at Everton. I've seen you draw at Spurs. You probably should have seen it out, but it's Spurs. But before that, you were quite poor. So it's one of them where outside looking in, I just feel like it's probably a little bit up and down.
Yeah, it's very start-stop, really. We had hoped that victories over Man City and then Everton away would lead to really kick-starting that domestic campaign, followed up with a win over Spurs and hopefully, from our point of view, Burnley. But they were just a little bit meh against Spurs on Tuesday, which doesn't fill me with a lot of confidence about Saturday. You know, we've seen glimpses of how good this squad and team can be in the Champions League. They've been particularly impressive. At home, they've been good. They were unbeaten in the last 7 in all competitions at home. They've won 6 of those 7. But just domestically, something's not quite clicking. I think Eddie Howe is trying to get to grips with having to rotate his squad and balance Champions League football and the League Cup as well. Injuries haven't helped, but we're getting those players back. The likes of Lewis Hall and Tino Livramento are back now and are starting games, which is so important because it totally changes the dynamic of the team going forward. And hopefully, Johan Wissa will be seen in a black and white shirt in a competitive arena for the first time on Saturday, because he should be back and at least on the bench. So that is good news for us, because we've really struggled in terms of having someone to compete and just rotate with Big Nick Valdemari up front.
Yeah, well, hopefully not from a Burnley perspective. But I do just want to bring the league table in, and apologies for the Burnley fans. I don't want to give you a fright, but we all know where we're at the minute. 10 points. It's looking bleak from a Burnley perspective. West Ham yet to play, so by the time you all watch or listen to this, they will have played, but they are away at Manchester United. So fingers crossed the Red Devils can do Burnley a favour. But this is more for the Newcastle perspective, Andrew. I'm looking at that. I'm taking screenshots of the bottom half, and Newcastle are all the way down in 12th. Like you mentioned there, like domestically something's not clicking. What is it from a fan journalist perspective that you think just isn't clicking domestically at the minute for Newcastle? Because it is a surprise to see you guys back in the bottom half of the table after so long of fighting it up at the top.
It's their away form. Their away form is the issue. They've been ahead in games and thrown it away. I mean, they've thrown away, home and away, in the Premier League, 11 points this season. That would put them top, or would have done before Wednesday's results. So that shows you that the kind of foundations are there, that they're doing it to a certain degree, and then they just can't see games out. But it is about the away form. And look, if they'd beaten Tottenham on Tuesday, which they should have done, they would have been on 21 points, and all of a sudden it's looking a lot more rosy. It's not that many points to the top 4, top 5 after that. It's just the away form is the big issue. And then I don't know, it was strange on Tuesday. They just didn't seem to get out of first gear, and it's whether there's that little bit of arrogance about them at times. We're at home. We'll just keep on trying to score goals, and it will come. And sometimes there's a real lack of discipline, and you can't account for errors, which Spurs took advantage of on Tuesday, scoring 2 goals which should have been stopped, and it was just pure defensive errors from Newcastle which allowed them back into the game. But like I said, with these players coming back, to not have your 2 first choice fullbacks for the majority of the season, that's always going to have an impact. To not have your number 9
of course it is.
for the majority of the season, it's going to have an impact. So these players are coming back now, and fingers crossed we can kick on and move up the table, because it's so important that Newcastle get European football again for next season.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned there, though, sort of like your form hasn't been great, and we've spoken about how it's been a little bit stop-start. I feel like at the minute you are looking a lot better. Obviously, you beat Athletic Club in the Champions League, a defeat at Brentford, but you did have a man sent off. And again, you've mentioned how your away form has been a little bit hit and miss. But then beat Man City at St James's, lost away in the Champions League to Marseille. But then you've gone to Everton and won. So obviously you might have turned the corner with your away form, which is just our luck because your players at the turf soon as well. And you drew at home to Tottenham. So without sounding too disrespectful about my own club and my own team, but if you're beating the likes of Man City and Tottenham at home, then surely you're going into this game and thinking, well, we should be beating Burnley.
Yeah, we should be. But Newcastle fans will have that sense of dread that they are the remedy, and what the doctor orders for teams who need a win. If you need a win, rock up St James's Park and you'll most likely get it. Hopefully that doesn't ring true. We should be beating Burnley. If you've got these aspirations, no disrespect to you guys, to be back playing European football for next season, then we should be. Home form is great. We should be putting you guys to a defeat. However, there seems to be a bit of a mentality issue. Like, if you ask me, and I said this a few weeks ago on our show, which game was I more confident of getting something from, Man City at home or Burnley at home? I'm going Man City every single day of the week, because these big games against the best sides, that's where Newcastle United have no issue, really. They get up for it. They take the game to them. They can get in their faces. They're aggressive. It's everything that is good about Newcastle United under Eddie Howe. And yet the teams they should be beating, the likes of West Ham, the likes of Brentford, the likes of Burnley, there's just something there. And whether it is, like I said, a bit of arrogance, whether it's underestimating the so-called smaller sides, I'm not really sure. But for a club that wants to be consistently in the Champions League, that needs to change. And I don't know if it will this season, but I do think there's a little glimmer of hope for you guys, because Newcastle, against sides that should lose at St James's Park, sometimes they slip up against them.
Yeah, well, St James's Park isn't exactly a happy hunting ground for Burnley. So, like I said at the start of the show before I even brought you in, if we go to St James's Park and get a win, it will be our sort of like first statement win of the season at a point where we need it. Do I think we'll get a win? No. We'll come on to predictions in a little bit. You've said there, though, sort of like you tend to lose against the teams that you expect to beat, but beat the teams that you expect to lose against. Obviously, Man City and West Ham being the perfect examples of that. You said there it might be a bit of arrogance. Do you not think maybe it's sort of like more surrounding the style of play of these teams? Because a team like Burnley and West Ham and even Brentford, that they're going to play against Newcastle and set up in a sort of like defensive style. Maybe I won't go as far as a low block for some of these teams, but maybe something similar to a low block, whereas the likes of City will open up against you because they think they can pick you off. They struggle to pick you off, then you pick them off and you score. So I fully expect Burnley to be quite defensive and sit back quite a lot at the weekend. Is that something that could play into Burnley's hands and something you think that Newcastle struggle with?
Yeah, they do struggle with it. They're better when they can hit teams on the counter with pace. And too often this season, the midfield's been non-existent, and the space behind the midfield and in front of the defence is just far too big, and teams have really exploited that. If Newcastle United press well, then they are as good as you'll see in the Premier League at doing that, but that hasn't been there this season. Against City, it was there, brilliant, but it's easier to do that because City are going to have a lot of the ball. They're going to try and play out from the back, so you can deploy that press. But against a side like Burnley, who you say are going to be defensive, you can't play that way. So then you've got to take the game, you've got to have the majority of the ball, and you've got to try and control it and break Burnley down with nice passages of play, precise passing, and Newcastle just haven't nailed that down at the moment. So if Burnley do sit back, I think they will have success in frustrating Newcastle. They've just got to make sure that they're switched on and don't allow Newcastle United to maybe get the ball into the box or don't have that kind of lapse in concentration when Newcastle will punish them. But if they can stay switched on and just sit back and absorb and look to hit them on the counter, then I think Burnley will have some success, as other teams have done this season.
That's the worry for me. Like you do paint this picture of maybe we can frustrate you if we sit back, but then as soon as you say you need to stop maybe balls getting into the box or lapses of concentration, that's been our downfall this season. We've conceded the exact same goal against Chelsea, Brentford, and Palace, all floated back balls into the box. Balls into the box towards the back post, where the defender's not been picking up his man, free header, or a very poor header in Kyle Walker's thing where he tried to head it behind him, even though there was a player there. Ridiculous decision. Just float some balls into the box, Eddie, if you're watching. Speaking of Eddie, what's the feeling surrounding, obviously, former Burnley manager Eddie Howe? I presume, obviously, he's the first manager to bring silverware to Newcastle to 50 plus years. I'm sure the man is loved across the fan base. There's no callings for his head, despite a slow start to the season. I know football fans can be fickle, so there might be one or two, but I'm sure that the general feeling up at St James's Park is one of love for Eddie.
Oh yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. There's been some criticism of him this season, but he's been open and honest and says he fully understands why that's been. His in-game management has been questioned at times, and we look back to that Tottenham game where he brought on Fabian Schär in injury time to try and shore up the defence, and really that was the wrong move because it just muddied the water in the box, an extra body, and it didn't work because Spurs went and got an equaliser. And we've had several examples of this season where in hindsight, and he's admitted this, he's made the wrong decision with players coming off the bench. So that criticism has been at his door, but it's totally understandable. But looking at him, in the larger scheme of things, yeah, he's loved. No one's calling for him to go. He's the man to lead Newcastle United for many, many years. And it's just now about getting these players back and fully fit. And I think once he's got his full squad, maybe needs to add a few in January, we'll see Newcastle United absolutely flying. I guess the one thing against him is that time isn't on his side in terms of getting Newcastle up the league, and has to click. It had to click, last week, the week before. Thankfully, it did against Everton, did against Man City. Didn't so much against Spurs. We just need that consistent run of results, and they haven't consistently played well all season, and that's the issue. But yeah, Eddie's absolutely loved, and he's an absolute legend.
I know you've touched on this briefly, but you have spoken about players coming back. Is there any other injuries / suspensions or people missing this match on a Newcastle from a Newcastle perspective that we need to know about?
Sandro Tonali went off at half-time against Tottenham with a bit of a knock, so he may be missing. But Eddie Howe's been rotating the centre of midfield in recent games, and it's been working reasonably well. So, I mean, he's a big loss. He's arguably the best midfielder I've seen in my time at Newcastle United, and he's only played 70-odd games. He's absolutely superb. But they have got options, which will mean that his loss isn't felt too badly. But other than that, they should be absolutely fine. Botman will be missing, but he hasn't been playing in recent games anyway. And again, they're quite well stacked at centre-back with decent defenders who are good in the air, got a bit of pace about them and can pick up passes. Again, he's not too much of a loss as Botman. But yeah, other than that, a clean bill of health, really. And we just have to hope that Yohan Wissa is available and on the bench. And even if he doesn't get off, I think just seeing him on the bench will be a massive boost to the fans and his teammates.
Yeah, that's fair enough. We've spoken briefly about sort of like Burnley's style of play and how we could potentially hurt you by sitting back and soaking the pressure up. How do you expect Newcastle to set up? How are Newcastle going to play against Burnley? Is it on the front foot, getting in our faces, or is that something you tend to reserve for the likes of Man City?
Like I said, Newcastle are best when they can apply that high press, but that'll not happen against Burnley because they'll have to have the majority of the ball. So then it just relies on the likes of Bruno to really pick that key pass. Hopefully, if Burnley do step up slightly, Newcastle can look to hit the balls over the top to the wingers, and if the wingers get it, then you've got pace and you've got precision, and whoever he decides to play, hopefully can supply the goods to Voldemort, as well as maybe getting a goal or two for themselves. It's going to be interesting to see who plays on the wings because Eddie is rotating, and Harvey Barnes has started a lot of games of late, so he may drop out. Anthony Gordon may come back in. Murphy will probably drop out. Elanga might come back in, but it's a flip of a coin, really, to who plays on Saturday. But yeah, certainly the wings is probably the key threat, as well as Voldemort dropping deep and holding onto the ball. If the wingers are ahead of Voldemort when he comes deep, that's where Newcastle will have the more success. They're still just getting used to doing that. They did it perfectly against Everton, but we haven't seen it too many times this season. That's been maybe the biggest flaw of their attacking approach, that no one is around Voldemort when he traps it, because, I mean, he's absolutely brilliant at it. But the issue is he then turns, he looks for someone to hit, and there's no one there to hit because he is the man that he'd be looking to hit. And we just need them wingers to make sure that as soon as he gets the ball in a deep position that they've gone. And if they do that, they'll have some success, hopefully.
It's interesting you say that. I feel like that's what we try to do in the forward areas, with the likes of Lyle Foster dropping deep or Zian Fleming dropping deep, and then having either Jadon Anthony Tuna or whoever's playing doing a similar thing. The problem is the players that we have just don't have the quality. Obviously, the likes of the players that you've just mentioned there, Elanga, Barnes, Gordon, obviously much better players than the likes of Jadon Anthony and Loom Tuna. That's no disrespect. I think even Jadon Anthony and Loom Tuna would agree with that. So interesting to see you do that. It'd be interesting to see how a team that has got good quality wingers do that on Saturday. I mean, fortunately for us, you don't get the chance to do it. You've touched on him there. You've touched on Baltimore. I do want to talk about him because I've been very, very impressed with him. I was aware of him. I didn't know too much about him when you signed him. I remember thinking, Newcastle might struggle, not struggles in relegation struggle, but struggle. I mean, ultimately, you have to be fair. But when you lost Isak, I thought Newcastle will struggle to replace his goals, and they might struggle in the league. Maybe a season of transition and then kicking on at the season after. But he's come in and he himself has done very, very well. And I am genuinely very, very worried about watching Burnley play against a striker of his quality at the weekend. I do think he will absolutely terrorise the defence. If he's dropping deep, he's likely to pull players out. And then obviously he said the wingers that you just mentioned can exploit that space. So talk to me more about him and sort of how he's settled into life up in Newcastle so far, because outside looking in, it looks like he's really settled into it.
He's done really well. I think he surprised a lot of people. The price tag puts a lot of pressure on his shoulders, but he's handled it superbly. He's also had the added pressure of having no one else to compete with, because Johan Wissa has been injured since he arrived in the summer, and Newcastle United haven't got another out-and-out striker, so that hasn't been ideal for him, and he's had to play a lot of games, but he's scoring goals, and I feel like he's one of those strikers who, as long as he keeps scoring, the confidence will keep building, and if he has a bad run where he doesn't score, it's going to be interesting to see how he handles that kind of mentally, because I think that will impact him. I think he's very much a confidence player. And really, like I say, if Newcastle United, and they're just learning to do it, can make sure players are running on beyond them, then we are going to have such a good player there, because when the ball's in the air, you automatically think it's all about him heading it, but it's not. The way he brings the ball down is unbelievable. Like, his first touch is just, it's astonishing to see. And then his hold-up play is really, really good. Doesn't look like the most muscly of players, because he's tall and he's lanky, but he's got a good bit of strength about him. And the footwork, he just dazzles defenders, really, really just sends them one way and he goes the other. And like we say, we just need to see Newcastle United make sure that they're deploying the players to run on beyond them, so that when he does bring the ball down, he can then give it to them, and then he can run on after them. But yeah, look, some of the goals he's scored have been absolutely brilliant. The penalty against Arsenal, people might remember the finish against Everton last week when he lobbed it over Jordan Pickford.
I bet you guys enjoyed that one, didn't you? Lobbing Pickford.
Oh, certainly so. Certainly so. He had a bit of a mare, did Jordan.
He did.
Weekend. But yeah, Voldemort has been absolutely brilliant. And I think we're just excited now to see Johan Wissa back, and if those two can play together, because I think if they can, then we're going to have a very exciting partnership on our hands.
No, definitely, I agree. But yeah, just to go back to that Pickford one, obviously the joke amongst Newcastle fans is the dinosaur arms, and to lob him just goes perfectly into that joke, doesn't it? And I saw one of the Newcastle pages create an image of just him being lobbed and it just being a tiny hand coming into the corner of the pitch. And I was sat here belly laughing for about 20 minutes. So yeah, I bet you guys enjoyed that. I do want to talk about what we're going to ask now. I'll have to cut this bit with myself. I can't remember. I had a very good question in my head. What time are we on? 24:21. 24:21. Yeah, that's right. I do want to talk about, we've spoken about players that might hurt Burnley, which is pretty much all of the Newcastle forward line. But let's talk about any players that, from a Newcastle perspective, and I'd apologise if I put you on the spot here. I remember when I spoke to a fan earlier in the season, you could see him very quickly grabbing his phone, just like you've done, to quickly search the Burnley players. But is there any Burnley players that, might not worry you? Because I can imagine this answer is going to be a bit of a short answer, but is there any Burnley players that you've seen this season that you think he might get some luck against us?
I mean, I think a lot of the focus and attention will be on Martin Dubravka. He'll get a great reception coming back to St James's Park. It's fascinating that a man who really burnt his bridges, or at least we thought he did when he forced through a loan move to Manchester United, came back. And then when it came to the cup final last season, many people were saying it should be Martin's place at Wembley, and in the end it did go back to Nick Pope. But it's amazing to see how he bounced back, and when he went to Burnley, he was sent on his way with good wishes from the fan base, and he's really loved up here. And I think you guys have got a really good keeper, and he'll have a key role in keeping you guys up and avoiding relegation. I know he's performed quite well for the majority of the season, and I think Fleming as well. I haven't seen too much of Burnley, but he looks like he's got something about him, knows where the back of the net is. And if Newcastle United do suffer the same lapses in concentration they did against Spurs, and maybe he could be the man who could capitalise on that.
I'm glad you mentioned Dubravka, because I did want to mention him. I did want to speak about him slightly, because I did feel like in the summer there was a lot of Newcastle fans sort of like disappointed to see him leave. And there were some comments earlier in the season, because Nick Pope, I love Nick Pope, obviously, for Nick Pope's obviously our old keeper, kind of like swap keepers, but it does seem to be making a lot of mistakes. What were the thoughts behind that transfer when it happened? Were you a little bit surprised that Newcastle let him go as well?
I think it was one of those where he's coming to the end of his career, and if he wants first team football, then we don't begrudge him that. Ideally, I think we would have liked to have seen him stop, just to offer that competition through the week in training and what have you, because we know how good he is. And even if he's not playing week in, week out, you still want those standards set during the week on the training pitch. But you can't begrudge someone one last roll of the dice, first team football in the Premier League. So yeah, it is what it is. And I think after everything he's given us, because through the dark years under Mike Ashley, he was one light that we enjoyed switching on, so to speak. I mean, that's a terrible metaphor. There wasn't much to love during Mike Ashley days, but he was something that we did enjoy. So yeah, sad to see him go, but it's good to see him having that kind of last hurrah.
Yeah, thoughts on Nick Pope's form? Because like I mentioned there in that question, I feel like he's started on the downhill trajectory to easy, but I can't say anything. They call me Joe the Butcher on this podcast. There's a reason for that. I can't even say trajectory, but he's started on that downward trajectory, hasn't he? I think going towards the end of his career now. He's had some poor games recently, hasn't Nick?
Yeah. And now Ramsdale's come in, didn't cover himself in a lot of glory against Tottenham, but I think people are going to reserve judgment till he's had a few games between the sticks. But in terms of Nick Pope, he's a fantastic shot stopper, but he just has this kind of rush of blood to the head, and it's happening far too often. I mean, Marseille, what on earth he decided to do? Pushes out, 30-odd yards, and he's never getting there. We know what his strengths are, and it is the shot stop. And I still maintain he's one of the best shot stoppers in the Premier League. But it's just the lapses in concentration are now coming to the front. And the other issue is his distribution. It's terrible. And you can kind of accept it and get on with it. But the issue is that when you've got the ball and he's not even trying to play out from the back, he's just trying to get the ball up the field and it goes out for a throw-in. Then you just...
Is he still doing that then? Yeah.
Still doing it. And that's the issue, because then you're just inviting pressure up the field when you've got the ball and you should be looking to get up the field yourselves. I think, look, Newcastle missed the opportunity in the summer to get James Trafford, and now obviously he hasn't had the best starts at Man City. They just need to go out and buy a goalkeeper who's going to be better than Nick Pope and better than Aaron Ramsey. That's going to cost you a lot of money, but that's what they need to do, and hopefully they do that in the summer.
It's interesting that you mentioned there about Nick Pope's kicking. That would have used to frustrate the life out of me. The amount of times he just booted, it always skew if to the left, always the left towards the Bob Lord stand from where I sit. Always go that way. But interestingly, you mentioned there the rush of blood. That's just something he didn't do at Burnley. I don't ever recall him having a rush of blood moment. He might have made a mistake here and there, but it was quite reliable at the turf. So I am surprised to see him. But like I said, I think he's getting older now. I think he's past 30. He's probably just on the downward trajectory. We'll start looking to wrap it up there, mate. But before we do, we have to do score predictions, please, mate. What's your score prediction for the weekend?
I should be confident about this one, but I've just got a sense of dread about it. I just think Burnley will frustrate Newcastle. So I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw.
Interesting. I would literally rip you limb from limb now to get a 1-1 draw up at St James. Like I said at the start, just stop the rot. Just stop the rot. And a draw up at St James is absolutely banging. Burnley do tend to score away from home. We don't tend to score at home. I think somebody highlighted the fact that we haven't scored at home since October yesterday. Now, obviously, we scored against Brentford last time out. Penalty, admittedly, but still a goal. So maybe we score. I was going to go 2-0, but I can't now after I've just said that. So, you know what? Sorry, I'm going to stick with 0-0. It's 0-0. I'll take 0-0. 2-0 to Newcastle. We do tend to score away from home, but I feel like Newcastle's defence is probably a little bit better than the likes of Brentford's and teams like that. So I think we will struggle to score up at St James's Park. But before we do wrap it up, mate, do you want to let everyone know where they can find you, your podcast, and maybe even the Chronicle?
Yeah, just head over to chroniclelive.co.uk. and then search the Everything is Black and White podcast either on YouTube or your podcast platforms.
Yeah, definitely do recommend checking that one out. And as I was saying to Andrew at the start of this, or before we'd even started, it's good to see a local newspaper doing something like this. I wish it's something that Matt and the Burnley Express would do more of, just something like this. But yeah, it's good to see that obviously the Chronicle does things in a little bit sort of like modern way of thinking. But Andrew, pleasure to have you on the show. I would say good luck for the rest of the season apart from Saturday. But what I'm going to say, because I'm going to be linking up with you just after Christmas, aren't we? Or is it just before Christmas? The next time we play, just after Christmas. So good luck after December. So have an awful December, please, mate. Look after that. But yeah, genuinely, mate. Pleasure to have you on the show. It's good to have you back. And yeah, I'll see you in about 3.5 weeks.